Sports Radio and FS1. Greg Cosell in about 5 minutes. Joy Taylor is joining me for hour number 2. How are you?
Doing great.
I have told you before, I've been kind of grading the hirings. What I don't believe in is if you have a young quarterback. Jets have Sam Darnold. He's trying to figure out how to be an NFL quarterback. I also don't want a young quarterback to have a coach who's trying to figure out how to be an NFL head coach. Freddie Kitchens has never been a high school football coach. I don't love that move in Cleveland. So as Baker's trying to learn how to do this thing, he's got a coach who's trying to how to do this thing. I don't like that. I don't like Arizona's situation where Josh Rosen's trying to figure out how to be an NFL quarterback, and he's got a college coach who's trying to become an NFL Gase is Kyle Shanahan before Kyle Shanahan. Years ago, Nick Saban was a coach at LSU. He had this, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid on his staff named Adam Gase, and he gave him all this responsibility because Nick Saban's like, who's the smart kid? This is a guy that had Peyton Manning's greatest year. Peyton Manning called the Jets their, smartest coordinator I've ever had. He won with Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow went in a 6-game winning streak. It was Adam Gase. By the way, he had a winning record with Ryan Tannehill, 13-11. He made the playoffs the first year in Miami with Ryan Tannehill. The previous 2 head coaches that Ryan Tannehill had losing records. Adam Gase had a winning record with him. He's a really good coach. But what happened? Tannehill got hurt. He had to use Jay Cutler and Brock Osweiler. And by the way, even this year, with Osweiler, they had really good Sundays, followed often by really bad Sundays, because that's what happens when you have a backup quarterback playing for you. But in the end, Gase is a great coach. He gave the Patriots trouble. He went 10-6 rookie year. He was a very successful coordinator. Now, the downside to him is he's Kyle Shanahan-ish. He can be condescending. He's really smart, and he knows it. He's very intense. He is in no passive-aggressive to him at all. He'll get right in your face. He's like Kyle Shanahan. He'll go to a press conference and chew out reporters. He is really intense, and he wears people out. He had a winning record with Ryan Tannehill. No Miami coach, there's been 3 of them now, have ever done that. He made the playoffs the first year. Tebow, Manning, Saban, all call on his behalf. He's a super sharp guy. Well, he was fired. Who gives a rip? Belichick's been fired in the NFL. Pete Carroll's been fired twice. Mike Shanahan's got 2 Super Bowls, been fired. John Gruden got fired. Next year won a Super Bowl. Jim Harbaugh got to a Super Bowl. 2 years later, he got fired. Andy Reid's been fired. Now he's the number 1 seed in the AFC. Guys, the NFL's for aggressive men to coach. They're aggressive guys. Aggressive guys get fired all the time. They get fired in radio, TV. They get fired in CEO jobs. You can't worry about getting fired. If you're worried about getting fired, don't take any grown-up jobs. If you want to be comfortable, go coach in college where you can dominate the athletic director. You pick all the players. In the NFL, you got a billionaire owner. You're in a big city. The media is rough, and they fire.
And you're also coaching millionaires,
yes,
kids who
it's
are playing
hard.
For scholarship.
NFL is a hard league to coach in. But Adam Gase, Jet fans were like, oh, listen, Mike McCarthy, I think's a great coach. I would have loved to see him get the Jets job. But I said my second choice is Adam Gase. And I also said, and Joy, you were here, so you can verify this, about 10 days ago when the NFL was firing all these coaches, they call it Black Monday, and they're firing everybody. Who was the one coach I said that got fired that I would hire again?
Well, McCarthy, obviously,
yeah.
but Gase.
Yeah, I said that day of all these guys that got fired that day, I said Adam Gase is going to get a job.
Yes.
Because my sources all say he's Kyle Shanahan before Kyle Shanahan. And by the way, Shanahan's never been fired yet, but he wears people out. And he calls out the media. And he's gruff. And he and Garoppolo, by the way, have had battles already.
I think being a Dolphins fan, my opinion of Gase is probably a bit skewed because I wanted to see him be successful there, and he wasn't. Again, I don't think your first stint as a head coach, if it's not necessarily successful, is a reflection of who you are as a head coach.
Right.
Certain situations matter, but Miami is not the most
stable,
functional organizations,
no,
historically.
They fired Dave Wannstedt years ago, and if you look at his first 3 years in Miami, he had more wins than Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh kept Tomlin to this day. They fired Wannstedt. Wannstedt made the playoffs and had a better record than Tomlin. That's what the Miami Dolphins do.
I love the Dolphins. All right, I obviously will. They have a great place in my heart, but they don't get enough credit for all the bad management decisions that they've made over the
By the
years.
way, when you're a Dolphin fan, you hate the Patriots, but the Jets are also a big rival, and Gase was 5-1 against the Jets. So he's a good coach. He's going to be very good in New York. This is a great, by the way, Sam Darnold got to choose. Sam Darnold got an opinion. They put him on a FaceTime, and he's like, I like Adam Gase more than McCarthy. That's the story today. All right, with that, over 35 years NFL films, as smart a guy as we bring on the show, Greg Cosell. Greg, how are you doing?
Colin, what's happening, my friend?
Well, let's just start with New England, who is favored against the Chargers. I said, Jacksonville, everybody told me, had more talent than New England, and the Seahawks in the Super Bowl did, and Pittsburgh always seems to, and they kind of figure out ways to win. It looks like when I watch the Chargers play, they have a great disparity talent edge on New England. Do you believe that to be the case?
I mean, I think you could look position by position and feel that the Chargers are better, but I think so much of these games come down to specific tactics and the way the games play out schematically. I think when you look at New England, they're a little bit different team offensively than they have been in the past. I think they're a little more foundationally based on the run game. I'm not sure they can line up the way they might have in years past and just give the ball to Tom Brady the way they have. I'm not sure he's quite at the same level. He's certainly not been as good on third down, and that's been a defining feature of their offense this year, that Tom Brady's not been as good on third down, and the offense has not been as good on third down. I think Gronkowski is not quite the same guy. I don't think he redirects quite the same way when you watch the tape. So, I think that there's certain things you look at and you see on tape. These teams played last year, and I think you're going to see the Chargers kind of do what they do on defense. The Chargers play with 6 defensive backs. The 7 defensive back thing was specific to Lamar Jackson, but they play with 6 defensive backs as their foundational approach. They'll do the same thing.
Is the Chargers with Phillip Rivers, the receiving core is deep. Hunter Henry, the tight end, is back. Their running backs, they've got all sorts of guys who can make plays. Phillip Rivers and the Chargers, though, could not get the ball in the end zone against Baltimore. It was a lot of field goals. Does that concern you?
Well, I think their offense that is concerning, and whether New England can exploit it is a different question, is their offensive line. I think that the Chargers' offensive line by NFL standards would probably be considered average at best. I think Phillip Rivers is the kind of quarterback that more often than not can compensate for that and camouflage the flaws in his O-line, but there are games in which he can't do that. I think Baltimore's defense is a really good defense with a ton of looks, multiple looks up front and pressure packages and high percentage blitz. That's a defense that they can't camouflage it against. So the question is, can they camouflage it against New England, who pretty much not a high percentage blitz team and not a great pass rush defense?
Let's shift to Kansas City, favored at home against Indianapolis. Colts defense is playing really well.
Yep.
Kareem Hunt, no longer a Kansas City Chief. They don't feel quite as stable offensively. They still have Cheetah, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, the schematics, Patrick Mahomes. I think it's a solid O-line. They have Sammy Watkins, who I think is overpaid, but he's still a weapon. I don't feel they run the ball quite as well. I mean, what do the Chiefs do offensively that you think they'll have success against even this very hot Colts defense?
Well, I think there's really 3 things when you play the Chiefs, in my view. One is you must have a plan for stopping Tyreek Hill when he lines up inside. They love to line him up in the slot and in the inside slot when there's 3 receivers to one side. You cannot let him run down the seams and get on top of your defense. Now, the Colts are a predominant zone defense. They'll be very conscious of this. And then there's Kelce. Travis Kelce is the other player that you really have to take care of. And he works from a lot of different places in the offense. That's one of the things that makes Andy Reid's offense so good, is the multiplicity of formations. And the final thing that you have to deal with is Patrick Mahomes' ability to make second reaction improvisational plays. I went through all his third downs this week. Actually, I went through them over the last weekend. And I was kind of astounded by how many came when he moved around improvisationally. So he's such a good thrower on the move, and he throws the ball down the field on the move. He's not a check down guy.
Yeah.
So you cannot let those big explosive plays happen off improvisation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I think the difference is. I think Mahomes will make a play and they'll win the game. I will say this about Andrew Luck. It is nice to see him have a wall in front of him. I think Marlon Mack, the running back's underrated. I think overall they're offensive line is, at least pass blocking, looks to be very efficient, and Luck's fantastic. And they've got depth at running back, and they need a number 2 receiver. I don't love their tackles.
Oh,
but,
for sure.
But I mean, when I look at the Colts, this is a real team now. This is not a mirage. I could see them winning with ball control.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you what you thought. I'm struggling in my own mind as to how they'll come out offensively. Clearly, Luck is playing at a high level, and I think he's a great quarterback as you do. But I'm curious as to whether they believe that they need to, on some level, run the ball and shorten the game.
That's what I think.
Or whether they're going to feel like, hey, Andrew Luck is hot, and not that we want to play a 51-48 game, but that, hey, we know this game is probably going to be in the high 20s and early 30s, perhaps, low 30s, so let's come out and try to be aggressive.
I think the Colts want to take the crowd out of it, and you do that with 5-yard gains. And I think they'll do a lot of pass to running backs, pass to the time. I think they'll have a very mundane, boring 5 play at a time, death by 1,000 cut offense.
Well, I think one player to watch is Nyheim Hines as a receiver, because the Chiefs play a ton of man coverage, and I think they can get matchups with Nyheim Hines.
All right, let's go to Philadelphia as a big underdog. And, here's the thing. Listen, everybody likes the Saints. Vegas likes the Saints. I get it. I mean, the Saints will probably win the game.